Coming to you live from the WSU campus, I'm Brian Fantana.
And I'm Ron Burgundy.
Today we will be discussing the current laws and policies that protect individuals from being impacted negatively from genomic testing, focusing on laws currently in place that protect individuals from discrimination with insurance or employers. Also, on laws that limit genomic testing and research.
Since genomics is growing exponentially in our world today, it is important for healthcare professionals to be aware of the complications and benefits to genomic testing and research. Being able to use genomic research to help patients and prevent the misuse of new genetic technologies and information is trivial.
So why is legislation needed, you ask? Let's close the gap in knowledge. Before the legislation was signed, here's a few points that helped... Oh God. What does this even say? Here are a few points stating why legislation was signed to help protect nurses and patients. Based on genetic information, employers may try to avoid hiring employers because they believed that they may take sick leave or resign or retire for health reasons. Twisted and crooked. Some employers may seek to use genetic tests to discriminate against against workers, even though they may never show signs of the disease, because employers fear the cost consequence. Insurers can still use genetic information in the individual market in decisions about coverage, enrollment, and premiums. Penalties in HIPAA for discrimination and disclosure violations should be strengthened in order to ensure individuals protection afforded by legislation.
Increased genetic testing makes it more likely that researchers will come up with early, life-saving therapy for a wide range of diseases with hereditary links. Genetic testing also will help doctors catch problems early, perhaps leading to preventative treatment and lower costs. Genetic testing laws and regulations are important in healthcare because nurses need to explain genetic testing to patients. Also, to protect ourselves as nurses, we all know HIPAA.
Yes, Ron. Right. I wanted to combine them both.
Yeah.
Yes, Ron. That's where we will begin. HIPAA, the Health Insurance Portability Accountability Act, was enacted by the United States Congress and signed by President Bill Clinton in 1996.
Wow.
HIPAA is extremely strict and highly enforced to protect patient security. In simplest terms, HIPAA addresses the security and privacy of health data.
At the state level, there are two laws that have been passed: the Privacy and Research Issues and Employment Non-Discrimination.
We'll start with employment non-discrimination. In Washington State, an RCW states that person, firm, corporation, or Washington State may not require an employee to submit genetic information or screening for genetic information. This protects the individual from being discriminated against from a genetic test results. Thus, this will aid the improvement of genetic testing and research, benefiting the future status of our state and country.
The RCW Privacy Issues Research Issues. In Washington State, a healthcare provider may not disclose healthcare information, including a patient's DNA and identified sequence of chemical base pairs about a patient to any other person without that patient's written authorization, even with research data. This, like HIPAA, protects the patient from discrimination and other negative outcomes from this information being disclosed.
Wow, Washington State is really strict on that.
Oh, I know, right?
On top of that, Washington State laws, GINA was signed in May 2008. GINA protects Americans from being discriminated based on information derived from genetic tests. It forbids insurance companies from discriminating through reducing coverages or pricing that prohibits employers from making adverse employment decisions based on a person's genetic code. In addition, insurers and employers are not allowed under law to request or demand genetic tests.
Research is expanding in personalized medicine, direct-to-consumer marketing and genetic tests, genetic testing and counseling, informed consent, fairness in the use of genetic information by insurers, employers, courts, schools, adoption agencies, and the military, among others. Privacy and confidentiality of genetic information.
Also, research is expanding in psychological impact and stigmatization due to an individual's genetic differences, reproductive issues, including adequate informed consent for complex and potentially controversial procedures, use of genetic information in reproductive decision-making and reproductive rights. Clinical issues including education of doctors and other health service providers, patients, and the general public in genetic capabilities, scientific limitations, and social risks, and implementation of standards and quality control measures in testing procedures. Uncertainties associated with gene testing, susceptibilities, and complex conditions such as heart disease, linked to multiple genes and gene-environment interactions. Conceptual and philosophical implications regarding human responsibility, free will versus genetic determination, and concepts of health disease.
The ELSI research program supports examinations and investigations of the ethical, legal, and social implications of genetic research. ELSI seeks to inform the development of policies and programs to address these implications in order to maximize the benefits of scientific research while minimizing the potential for social, personal, and psychological harm. Established in 1990, the ELSI research program is currently the largest supporter of medical ethics research in the federal government.
Wow. In addition to the scarcity of genetic specialists relative to potential demand for genetic testing, there are other reasons why professionals should be involved in genetic testing. First, few people have sufficient understanding of genetics to recognize whether they or their children have an increased risk for an inherited disease. Therefore, healthcare professionals who provide care for most people have a responsibility to determine whether high-risk situation is present. Second, healthcare providers and nurses who visit periodically are in excellent position to elect this risk. Electing risk by family and past history. Once the risk is known, non-genetic professionals should be able to point someone in the right direction for genetic testing. With proper training and adequate knowledge of test validity, disease and mutation frequency in the ethic groups to whom they provide care, primary care providers and other non-genetic specialists such as nurses can and should be the ones to offer this predictive genetic test at-risk individuals.
Well, Brian, in summary, laws and regulations protect our patients from being discriminated and violated. Laws such as HIPAA and GINA protect our patients' information, including genetic testing. Insurance companies or employers cannot request genetic testing to change policies or hiring. Genetic testing is expanding greatly. We must be the ones to learn about these laws and restrictions in order to successfully protect and care for our patients. Legality may not be the most fun thing to learn, but it is important in caring for patients and protecting yourself from violations.
Thank you for listening, and stay classy! And here are our references.